"You're not exactly a priority right now," my mom texted as I sat alone at my promotion dinner. 2 hours later, my cousin posted, "Family night out for the real success story." It was my brother. He bought a jet ski. I paid the $1,940 bill, went home and canceled the mortgage payments I'd been covering for 3 years. Then I left a note on their door. Let him pay it. By morning, $1 million in debt hit them. I need to write this down because honestly, I'm still processing what happened. I 32 female, and I just learned that being the responsible one in the family doesn't mean what I thought it meant. Let me start from the beginning. I'm the older sister by 4 years. My brother Jake has always been the golden child. Charming, charismatic, the kind of guy who could talk his way out of anything. Mom and dad have been bailing him out since he was 16. Failed classes? They hired tutors. Crashed his car? They bought him a new one. Lost job after job? They'd make excuses and help him find another one. Growing up, the double standard was so obvious it was almost comical. I remember when I was 12 and Jake was 8, I got grounded for a month because I forgot to take out the trash twice in 1 week. But when Jake forgot to do his homework for 3 weeks straight, Mom sat down with him every night to help catch up, praising him for his effort. When I brought home a report card with all A's and 1 B+, Dad would scan it and say, "What happened in math?" But when Jake managed to scrape together C's and D's, they'd celebrate like he'd won a Nobel Prize. The pattern continued through high school. I worked part-time at a grocery store to save for college while maintaining a 4.0 GPA and playing varsity tennis. My weekends were spent either at work or studying. Jake spent his weekends partying, skipping school, and getting into minor trouble that my parents would smooth over with phone calls to teachers and principals. When I graduated as valedictorian and got a full scholarship to State University, my parents attended the ceremony but spent most of it on their phones dealing with Jake's latest crisis. He'd failed his driving test for the third time and was having a meltdown about it. At the graduation party my grandparents threw for me, the conversation somehow shifted to Jake within the first hour, with Mom explaining to everyone how he was going through a tough time and needed extra support. Meanwhile, I was the one who never needed help. Good grades, scholarship to college, steady job in finance right after graduation. I bought my own car, paid my own bills, never asked for anything. In my family's logic, that meant I didn't need attention or support. Jake needed help, so Jake got help. Simple as that. College was my escape. 4 hours away from home, I thrived in an environment where my achievements were recognized and valued. I studied finance, maintained my scholarship, and graduated summa cum laude. I got recruited by a mid-sized investment firm before graduation and started making decent money right away. Jake, on the other hand, took 6 years to finish a 2-year community college program, changing majors 4 times. Each time he struggled or failed a class, my parents would hire tutors, pay for extra courses, or find someone to advocate for him with professors. When he finally graduated with an associate's degree in general studies, they threw him a bigger party than they'd thrown for my college graduation. I established myself in my career quickly. I was analytical, detail-oriented, and had a natural talent for spotting financial trends and inefficiencies. Within 3 years, I was promoted to senior analyst. Within 5 years, I was managing a team and earning 6 figures. I bought a nice condo, invested wisely, and built a solid emergency fund. Jake bounced from job to job. Sales positions mostly, since his charm could get him hired, but his work ethic couldn't keep him employed. He'd last 6 months to a year at each place before getting fired for attendance issues, conflicts with management, or simply not meeting quotas. Each time, he'd move back in with my parents for a few months while he figured things out. 3 years ago, everything changed when my parents bought their dream house. It was this gorgeous colonial in Maplewood Estates, one of the most prestigious neighborhoods in our city. 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, a 3-car garage, and a backyard that belonged in a magazine. The kind of house they'd driven through on Sunday afternoons for years, pointing out details and dreaming about someday. The problem was that someday came before they could actually afford it. Dad made $58,000 a year as a high school math teacher, and Mom earned maybe $20,000 annually with her part-time bookkeeping for a few small businesses. Their combined gross income was under $80,000. But the house they fell in love with required a $4,200 monthly mortgage payment, plus property taxes of $8,000 annually, insurance, utilities, and maintenance. Any financial advisor would have told them they were insane. The rule of thumb is that your housing costs shouldn't exceed 30% of your gross income. For my parents, this house represented over 65% of their gross income, and that was before taxes, utilities, food, or any other living expenses. But they were determined. Mom had been driving by this particular house for 2 years, ever since it first went on the market. When the price dropped after 8 months with no buyers, she convinced Dad they could make it work. They'd sacrifice in other areas, she said. Eat out less. Take fewer vacations. Be more careful with spending. They qualified for the mortgage. Barely, using a combination of their good credit history and a loan program for educators that required only 3% down. They sold their old house, which gave them enough for the down payment and moving expenses, but left them with no savings buffer. Within 3 months, they were drowning. The mortgage payment was manageable in theory, but in practice, they'd forgotten about all the additional costs. Property taxes were higher than expected. The old heating system needed major repairs. The roof had a leak that required immediate attention. Their utility bills nearly tripled in the larger house. That's when Dad called me. He didn't ask directly. He never does. Instead, he invited me over for dinner on a Tuesday night. Mom had made my favorite pot roast, which should have been my first clue that something was up, since she usually only made it for special occasions. They spent the first hour showing me around the house, pointing out every detail with obvious pride. The crown molding in the dining room, the walk-in master closet, the kitchen island where Mom planned to do all her holiday baking. Their happiness was genuine and infectious. I was glad they'd found their dream home. Then, over dessert, the real conversation started. Your mother's been having trouble sleeping, Dad said, not looking at me directly. The stress of the new house is getting to her. Mom nodded, looking tired. I lie awake at night doing math in my head, trying to figure out how to make everything work. We knew it would be tight at first, but we didn't anticipate all the extra expenses. We're not asking for charity, Dad said quickly. We just need some temporary help while we adjust to the new budget. I'd hate to see your mother's heart broken, he continued, looking directly at me. She's worked so hard for this. We both have. I knew what he was asking. I'd been making $95,000 a year for 2 years, had minimal expenses living in my paid-off condo, and a healthy savings account. I could afford to help temporarily. What kind of help are you thinking? I asked. Maybe you could help with the mortgage for a few months, Mom said, just until we get our feet under us. We could cut back in other areas. Maybe I could pick up more bookkeeping clients. It would just be temporary, Dad emphasized. 6 months, maybe a year at most. Looking back, I can see all the red flags I ignored. They hadn't presented any actual plan for how they'd take over the payments. They hadn't mentioned specific spending cuts or income increases. They were asking me to subsidize a lifestyle they couldn't afford, with only vague promises about making it work, eventually. But at the time, all I saw was my parents' stress and my ability to help. I'd been the responsible one my whole life. This was just an extension of that role. Okay, I said. I can help with the mortgage temporarily. The relief on their faces was immediate and profound. Mom actually started crying. Dad hugged me and said I was saving their marriage, because the financial stress had been causing them to fight constantly. That was 3 years ago. I've been paying $4,200 every month since then, plus helping with unexpected expenses. New roof when the leak got worse? $18,000 from me. HVAC system upgrade when the old one died in July? $12,000. Property taxes that increased each year? I absorbed the difference. Even smaller things. The garage door opener that broke, the dishwasher that needed replacing, the landscaping Mom wanted for the front yard. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary, but it became the new normal. My parents stopped talking about paying me back or taking over the payments. They just accepted my monthly transfers like they were entitled to them. When I'd mentioned the original timeline we'd discussed, Dad would say something like, "We're still working on it," or "Mom's been looking into more clients," but there was never any concrete progress. Meanwhile, Jake continued his pattern of expensive mistakes and dramatic failures. He'd moved back in with my parents after his latest girlfriend kicked him out for not paying his share of rent for 3 months. He treated their house like a hotel, coming and going at all hours, leaving messes everywhere, bringing friends over for loud parties that annoyed the neighbors. But here's the thing that really got to me. Whenever Jake did anything, literally anything, it was celebrated like he'd cured cancer. Got a part-time job at Dick's Sporting Goods after being unemployed for 4 months? Mom cooked his favorite dinner and invited the whole extended family over to celebrate. Passed his real estate license exam on the 3rd try after failing twice? Dad organized a weekend trip to the lake to celebrate Jake's achievement. Meanwhile, my actual accomplishments were met with, "That's nice, honey," and immediate redirection to whatever Jake was doing. When I got promoted to senior financial analyst with a $15,000 raise, I called to share the news, and Mom's response was, "Oh, that's wonderful, dear." Did I tell you Jake started that new job? He sold 3 gym memberships his first week. The pattern was so consistent it became predictable. Jake would achieve something minor, or do the bare minimum expected of an adult, and the family would rally around him with praise and celebration. I would achieve something significant in my career or personal life, and it would be acknowledged briefly before the conversation moved to more interesting topics, usually whatever Jake was doing or planning to do. It wasn't just the lack of recognition that bothered me. It was the clear message that my role in the family was to be the stable, successful, reliable one who didn't need attention or support. Jake got to be the charming screw-up who always needed help and encouragement. I got to be the ATM who should be grateful for the opportunity to subsidize everyone else's dreams. This dynamic played out in countless small ways over the 3 years I was paying their mortgage. When Jake crashed his car because he was texting while driving, my parents helped him buy a replacement and pitched in for the increased insurance costs. When I got a small fender bender that wasn't my fault, I handled everything myself: insurance claims, rental car, repairs, and never even mentioned it to them. When Jake lost his job at the sporting goods store for repeatedly showing up late, my parents spent weeks helping him network, polish his resume, and apply for new positions. When I was dealing with a difficult client situation at work that had me stressed and working 14-hour days for 2 months, they never asked how I was handling it or if I needed any support. The most telling incident happened about 18 months into paying their mortgage. Jake had gotten fired from another sales job and was having what Mom called a crisis of confidence. He was depressed, sleeping until 2 p.m. every day, and talking about maybe moving to Colorado to start fresh with some friends who had a vague plan to start a marijuana dispensary. My parents were beside themselves with worry. They suggested a family therapy session to help Jake work through his feelings about his career path. When I pointed out that maybe the problem wasn't Jake's feelings, but his work ethic and inability to take responsibility for his actions, they accused me of being unsupportive and lacking empathy. Jake is going through a really tough time right now, Mom said. He needs our encouragement, not criticism. What about when I was going through a tough time? I asked. When I was working 18-hour days during the Henderson merger and barely had time to sleep, did anyone suggest I needed encouragement or support? That's different, Dad said. You're good at handling stress. Jake is more sensitive. That conversation crystallized something for me. In my family's mind, I wasn't allowed to struggle or need help because being strong and capable was my assigned role. Jake was allowed to be weak and needy because that was his role. Neither of us was seen as a complete person who might sometimes be strong and sometimes need support. But I kept paying their bills and attending family gatherings where Jake's minimal accomplishments were celebrated while my significant ones were barely acknowledged. I told myself it was temporary, that eventually they'd get their finances sorted out and recognize how much I'd sacrificed for them. Which brings me to last Tuesday, 3 years to the month after I started paying their mortgage. I'd been working toward this promotion for 2 years, senior financial analyst to director of financial operations, with a $30,000 raise and my own team of 6 analysts. It was huge for me, the kind of career milestone I'd been dreaming about since college. The promotion meant I'd be the youngest director in my company's history, and it came with real responsibility. I'd be overseeing a $2.3 billion portfolio. I'd been through 3 rounds of interviews, presented to the executive committee, and competed against internal and external candidates. When I got the call that I'd been selected, I actually cried in my office. It represented everything I'd worked for: recognition of my skills, advancement in my career, and financial security that would let me start thinking about buying a house, maybe starting a family someday. I wanted to celebrate properly. I made reservations at Marcello's, this upscale Italian place downtown that had gotten amazing reviews. I'd been wanting to try it for months but couldn't justify the expense for just myself. This seemed like the perfect occasion. I planned everything carefully. I called my parents 2 weeks in advance to save the date. I sent calendar invites to everyone: my parents, Jake, my Aunt Lisa and Uncle Tom who lived nearby, and my cousin Kelly. I told them it was a celebration dinner for my promotion and how excited I was to share the news with everyone. Mom seemed pleased when I called. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful. Of course we'll be there. I'm so proud of you." Dad got on the phone to congratulate me and said he was looking forward to hearing all about my new responsibilities. Even Jake seemed genuinely happy for me when I texted him. "Congrats, sis. Can't wait to celebrate. Will there be good wine?" The day of the dinner, I took the afternoon off to get ready. I went to the salon for a blowout, got my nails done, and bought a new dress. A navy blue sheath that made me feel confident and professional. I was more excited about this dinner than I'd been about anything in months. I got to Marcello's 15 minutes early, wearing my new dress and carrying the portfolio folder with my official promotion letter to show everyone. The restaurant was exactly as beautiful as I'd hoped. Dim lighting, white tablecloths, fresh flowers on every table. The hostess seated me at a round table for 6 near the window, with a perfect view of the city skyline. I ordered a bottle of Chianti Classico, something nice but not ostentatious, and waited for my family to arrive. I'd printed copies of my promotion announcement to show everyone the official title and salary increase. 7 p.m. came and went. The hostess kept glancing over at my table, probably wondering where my party was. 7:15 p.m. I texted the family group chat, "Hey, I'm here at Marcello's!" Table by the window, can't wait to celebrate with everyone. No responses. 7:30 p.m. I called my mom. It went straight to voicemail, which was unusual. Mom always answered her phone. 7:45 p.m. I tried Dad. Also voicemail. By 8 p.m., I was sitting alone at this table set for 6, nursing my second glass of wine, while other diners were clearly noticing the empty chairs around me. The waitress had stopped by 3 times asking if I wanted to order appetizers or wait for my party. "I'm sure they'll be here soon," I kept saying, but I was starting to feel sick with embarrassment and confusion. 8:15 p.m., I tried Jake. Voicemail. 8:20 p.m., I called Aunt Lisa. Voicemail. At this point, I was fighting back tears. Something was clearly wrong. Had there been an accident? A family emergency? Why wasn't anyone answering their phones? That's when I got the text from Mom. "Sorry, honey, you're not exactly a priority right now. Jake needed us for something important." Rain check? I stared at that message for a full minute, reading it over and over. "You're not exactly a priority right now." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd been paying their mortgage for 3 years, covering their emergencies, subsidizing their dream lifestyle, and I wasn't a priority. But whatever Jake needed was important enough for the entire family to abandon me without even a phone call. I sat there for another few minutes, trying to process what was happening. The waitress approached again, looking sympathetic. "Would you like to order something, or would you prefer to wait a little longer?" "I'll order," I said, my voice barely steady. "Just for me." I ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, the seafood special with lobster tail and filet mignon. I ordered another bottle of wine, a fancy dessert, an appetizer I didn't want. If I was going to eat this humiliation sandwich, I might as well make it expensive. The meal was excellent, but I barely tasted it. I kept checking my phone, hoping for an explanation or apology, but there was nothing. I paid the $1,940 bill, the wine, the elaborate meal, the automatic gratuity for a party of 6, with my credit card, left a generous tip in cash, and walked out into the cool October evening. I drove home in a daze, but the anger was building with every mile. By the time I got to my condo, I was furious. Not just hurt, but genuinely angry in a way I hadn't been in years. I poured myself a large glass of wine and opened Instagram to distract myself from the humiliation and rage. That's when I saw my cousin Kelly's story. The first slide was a selfie of her with a big smile, captioned, "Family night out for the real success story." I tapped through to the next slide. A video of my entire family, my parents, Jake, Kelly, Uncle Tom, Aunt Lisa, even my grandparents who I hadn't seen in months, all gathered around a table at Romano's, the Italian place across town from where I'd been sitting alone. They were raising glasses in a toast, everyone laughing and smiling. Jake was standing at the head of the table, grinning like he'd won the lottery. The next slide was a photo of Jake standing next to a brand new jet ski on a trailer in my parents' driveway. A bright blue Yamaha with all the accessories, the kind that costs $35,000 easy. "Look what Jake bought today," Kelly had captioned it. Living his best life. More slides followed. Jake posing with the jet ski like it was a sports car. My parents beaming with pride on either side of him. My dad slapping Jake on the back in congratulations. My mom with tears of joy in her eyes, hugging Jake like he'd just graduated from Harvard. The final slide was a group photo of everyone at the restaurant, with Jake in the center holding what looked like financing papers for the jet ski, celebrating Jake's big purchase and his new rental business idea. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling like I was in an alternate reality. My brother had bought a jet ski, a recreational toy, and my entire family had ditched my promotion dinner to celebrate it. Not only had they chosen his jet ski over my career achievement, but they'd gone to an Italian restaurant to celebrate, knowing I was sitting alone at a different Italian restaurant waiting for them. The rage that had been building in the car reached a crescendo. I started shaking, literally trembling with anger. I kept thinking about that text from Mom. "You're not exactly a priority right now." But Jake's jet ski was a priority. Jake's impulse purchase of a toy he couldn't afford was more important than celebrating my career milestone that I'd worked toward for 2 years. I opened my laptop and started doing math. Not the rough estimates I'd been carrying in my head, but actual calculations based on my bank records and tax documents. 3 years of mortgage payments, $151,200. The new roof, $18,000. HVAC system replacement, $12,000. Property taxes, my portion, $22,000. Home insurance. Somehow I'd started paying this too. $4,500, misc repairs, garage door, dishwasher, etc. $8,300. Jake's car insurance when he was short. $3,600 dad's credit card payment. That emergency. $2,400 mom's dental work. $6,800. Jake's student loan payments during his rough patch. $7,200. The total was staggering. $236,000 over 3 years. I'd paid more than $250,000 to support my family's lifestyle and financial irresponsibility. And when I needed them to show up for one dinner to celebrate the biggest achievement of my career, I wasn't a priority. I logged into my online banking and looked at all the automatic transfers I'd set up. Monthly mortgage payment, quarterly property tax payment, annual insurance payment. I'd automated my generosity to make it easier for everyone, including myself. I canceled every single one. The mortgage payment scheduled for next Friday, canceled. The property tax payment due in 2 weeks, canceled. The homeowner's insurance renewal next month, canceled. But I wasn't finished. I was thinking more clearly than I had in years, and I realized that this went beyond just the house payments. I'd been enabling this entire family dynamic where Jake's needs and wants were prioritized over everyone else's, including mine. I spent the next 2 hours going through my financial records with a fine-tooth comb. It was worse than I'd thought. Beyond the obvious house payments, I'd been covering so many of their expenses that I'd lost track. There was the time Jake's transmission died, and I loaned him $3,800 for repairs. The weekend my parents went to a wedding and asked me to cover their hotel and rental car because they were a little short. The graduation gift for Jake when he finally finished community college. Not just the $500 cash I gave him directly, but also my share of the family gift, plus the cost of the celebration dinner I'd paid for. I'd been subsidizing their poor financial decisions for years, not just the 3 years of mortgage payments. Every time someone in my family had a financial problem, I was the solution, and they'd all come to expect it. The most infuriating part was realizing how they'd manipulated me into this role. They never asked directly for money. Instead, they'd share their stress, their worry, their fear of consequences. They'd make me feel like the only person who could help, the only one who cared enough to sacrifice for the family. I don't know what we'll do if we lose the house, Mom would say when property taxes were due. Jake's really struggling right now, and I think losing his car would just destroy what's left of his confidence, Dad would mention when Jake couldn't make his insurance payment. They'd paint me as the hero who could save the day, and I'd fallen for it every time. But tonight, seeing my entire family celebrate Jake's jet ski purchase while I sat alone at a restaurant waiting for them, the manipulation was finally clear. I wasn't their hero. I was their bank account with legs. I printed out a summary of every payment I'd made on their behalf over the past 5 years. The list was 6 pages long. Car payments, insurance payments, emergency repairs, medical bills, credit card payments, student loans, and dozens of smaller expenses that had seemed minor at the time, but added up to a fortune. The grand total was $374,000. I'd paid for Jake to live consequence-free for years while working my ass off to build a career and financial stability. I'd enabled my parents to live in a house they couldn't afford, while they treated me like an afterthought. I grabbed my keys and drove to their house. It was 11:30 p.m., but I could see lights on throughout the house and several cars in the driveway. They were probably still celebrating Jake's brilliant jet ski purchase. I wrote a note on a piece of paper. Since Jake is the priority and the real success story, let him pay for it. All of it. The mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the repairs, everything I've been covering for 3 years. Maybe his new jet ski rental business can generate enough income to support the lifestyle I've been subsidizing. I'm done being your personal bank. Sarah. I taped the note to their front door along with the 6-page summary of every payment I'd made on their behalf. Then I drove home, took a hot shower, and slept better than I had in months. The next morning started at 6:47 a.m. with my phone ringing. It was Dad. I let it go to voicemail. Then Mom called. Voicemail. Jake called. Voicemail. Aunt Lisa called. Voicemail. By 9 a.m., I had 17 missed calls and 43 unread text messages. My phone kept buzzing with new calls and messages, but I was at work and had turned off the sound. During my lunch break, I finally listened to the voicemails. Dad's first message was panicked. "Sarah, please call me back immediately. There's been some kind of mistake with the mortgage payment. The bank called this morning saying we're overdue, but that's impossible because you always... Please call me as soon as you get this." His second message was more frantic. "Sarah, I don't understand what's happening. The insurance company called and said our policy lapsed because of non-payment. Please call me back right away. We need to fix this immediately." Mom's messages started concerned and escalated to desperate. "Honey, please pick up your phone. We found your note and I don't understand what you mean. We can work this out. Please call me back." "Sarah, you can't just stop paying for things without warning us first. We have obligations. Please call me back so we can discuss this like adults." "Sarah, I'm begging you to call me back. The mortgage company is saying we owe the full balance immediately. That can't be right. Please help me understand what's happening." Jake's messages were predictably self-centered and angry. "What the hell, Sarah? You can't just stop paying for stuff because you're mad about one dinner. Call me back now. This is so typical of you. You do something nice for people and then hold it over their heads forever. We get it. You make more money than us. Get over yourself and call me back." "Okay. I talked to Mom and Dad and this is really serious. You need to fix this right now. I don't care if you're mad at us. You can't just screw over the whole family because your feelings got hurt." The text messages were a progression of panic, anger, denial, and desperate pleading. Apparently, my parents had just discovered that I'd been covering a lot more than just the mortgage payment. When all of my automatic payments stopped simultaneously, their entire financial house of cards had collapsed overnight. The mortgage was the biggest immediate crisis. They'd missed the payment for the first time in 3 years, and because their loan was considered high risk due to their debt-to-income ratio, the bank had immediately triggered an acceleration clause. They were demanding the full remaining balance, $847,000, due within 30 days. But it got worse. The property taxes I'd been paying were now overdue, with penalties and interest that pushed the total to $31,000. The homeowner's insurance had lapsed, which violated their mortgage terms and triggered additional penalties. Their credit cards, which I'd occasionally helped with, were maxed out from Jake's jet ski purchase and now in default because they couldn't make the minimum payments. Within 24 hours of my note appearing on their door, my parents were facing over $1 million in immediate debt obligations, with no way to pay any of it. I finally called them back that evening, after letting them marinate in panic for a full day. "Sarah, thank God," Mom said when she answered on the first ring. "We need to talk right away. There's been a terrible mistake with all of our accounts." "No mistake," I said calmly. "I stopped paying your bills. All of them. But you can't just do that without warning. We have legal obligations. The bank is threatening foreclosure. So do I. I have an obligation to myself to stop being taken advantage of by people who think I'm not a priority." There was silence on the other end. "Honey, we're sorry about the dinner," Mom said finally. "But Jake had this amazing opportunity to buy the jet ski, and the seller was only available last night. It was a once-in-a-lifetime deal. It's a toy, Mom. A $35,000 toy that he bought while I've been paying your mortgage for 3 years. That's different. The jet ski is an investment. Jake's going to start a rental business. He's already researched the market and..." I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. "Mom, Jake has researched exactly nothing. He saw a jet ski he wanted, figured out how to finance it, and bought it on impulse. Just like he does everything else. You don't understand. This could be his big break. The rental market for watercraft is really strong right now and..." "Stop. Just stop. You're making excuses for him like you always do. Jake bought a toy he can't afford to start a business he's never going to follow through on. And you all ditched my promotion dinner to celebrate it." Dad got on the phone. "Sarah, please be reasonable. We can work this out. You know we appreciate everything you've done for us." "Do I? Because last night you told me I wasn't a priority. That's not what your mother meant." "It's exactly what she meant. For 3 years, I've been your safety net. I've paid your bills, covered your emergencies, and subsidized your lifestyle. And the one time I needed you to show up for me, you chose Jake's jet ski instead." "We'll pay you back," Dad said desperately. "Every penny. We know we owe you money and we'll work out a payment plan." "With what money?" "Dad, you couldn't afford your mortgage 3 years ago, and you can't afford it now. The only difference is that I'm not subsidizing your poor financial decisions anymore." "But we'll lose the house," Mom said, her voice breaking. "We'll lose everything. Maybe you should have thought of that before you bought a house you couldn't afford and spent 3 years taking advantage of my generosity. Over the next few days, the calls became more frequent and more desperate. Everyone in my extended family got involved, calling to either support me or pressure me to fix things. Jake called to tell me I was being selfish and vindictive. It's just one dinner, Sarah. You're acting like we killed your dog or something. Get over it and start paying the bills again before you ruin everyone's lives. It's not about one dinner, I told him. It's about 3 years of taking me for granted. It's about thinking my money is yours by right. But my achievements don't matter. I never asked you to pay for anything. You didn't have to ask. You knew mom and dad couldn't afford their lifestyle, and you knew I was covering it. You just didn't care as long as it didn't affect you. That's not true. I care about you. Really? Then why didn't you come to my promotion dinner? Why didn't you even text me back when I said I was waiting at the restaurant? I was excited about the jet ski. I wasn't thinking about anything else. Exactly. You weren't thinking about me, my dinner, my promotion, or my feelings. Just like always. Aunt Lisa called to try to mediate. Sarah, I understand you're hurt, but you can't let pride destroy your family's financial stability. I'm not destroying anything, I said. I'm just not fixing it anymore. There's a difference. But they'll lose the house. Your parents will be homeless. They won't be homeless. They'll just have to live somewhere they can actually afford, like most people do. Don't you feel any responsibility for this situation? You enabled them to get into this mess by paying their bills. That stung because it was partially true. You're right. I did enable them. That's exactly why I'm stopping now. Even my grandparents got involved. Grandpa called to tell me I was breaking up the family over money. In my day, families stuck together through thick and thin. You don't abandon your parents because they made a mistake. Grandpa, they didn't make a mistake. They made hundreds of mistakes over 3 years, and I bailed them out every time. I'm not abandoning them. I'm just not subsidizing their irresponsibility anymore. But what about forgiveness? What about family loyalty? What about respect? What about treating me like I matter? The person who surprised me the most was my grandmother on Dad's side. Grandma Rose called me 3 weeks after everything started. Sarah, she said, I want you to know that I think you did the right thing. I almost dropped the phone. Grandma Rose had always been Dad's strongest supporter, the one who made excuses for everyone and preached family harmony above all else. I've been watching your parents take advantage of your kindness for years, she continued. I tried to talk to your father about it multiple times, but he wouldn't listen. He said you were happy to help and that families support each other. I was happy to help at first, but it stopped being help and became an expectation. That's exactly the problem. They confused your generosity with obligation, and they forgot that you're their daughter, not their personal bank account. Grandma Rose had some advice that really stuck with me. Don't let them guilt you into fixing this mess. Sometimes people need to face the consequences of their choices before they learn to make better ones. She was right, but watching the fallout wasn't easy. The foreclosure moved quickly once the bank realized my parents had no way to catch up. Their combined income was $4,800 take-home, but their house payment alone was over $5,000. Even without penalties, they couldn't make payments without me. My parents tried everything. Dad applied for a second mortgage, denied due to ruined credit. Mom looked into selling, but they owed more than the house was worth. Jake offered to help financially, which was almost laughable. His contribution would have been maybe $300 from his part-time retail job. The most desperate attempt came when Dad called offering to make me a co-owner. You could have equity for all the money you've put into it. Dad, I don't want to own your house. I want you to learn to live within your means. Meanwhile, Jake was dealing with his own reality check. The jet ski payments were $847 monthly for 5 years, financing $35,000 at 12% interest for a total cost over $50,000. His rental business plan was predictably half-baked. When he called marinas about slip space, he discovered years-long waiting lists and monthly fees exceeding his payment. Within a month, Jake was trying to sell. He owed more than it was worth, and eventually let it get repossessed, destroying his credit while still owing thousands. 6 weeks after I stopped payments, my parents found a short sale buyer. They avoided foreclosure but lost every penny of equity and destroyed their credit. They moved into a $1,400 rental, exactly what they could afford on their actual income. No more dream house, no more keeping up appearances. Jake got a second job and moved into his own apartment for the first time since college. Mom returned to full-time work as a bookkeeper. Dad started tutoring evenings and weekends. The social adjustment was brutal. They'd been living in an expensive neighborhood, driving nice cars, maintaining appearances of success they couldn't afford. Moving to a modest rental and older cars crushed their pride. But something interesting happened. Without me as their financial safety net and Jake as their main focus, my parents started seeing our family dynamic more clearly.